Hey Brian, here's another farm video for you. So today's project is to plant some grass. So I've got some dryland pasture grass mix here. You can see what it looks like there. I'm going to be planting this using a grain drill. You can see how this seed is pretty light and fluffy. Grain drills don't handle that very well. They tend to get clogged up when there's light fluffy seed like that in there. So I'm mixing it with cracked corn, 50% by weight, to weigh the seed down and keep it flowing through the drill. I've got a cement mixer here. I'll show you how this goes. So I have 10 pounds of the grass seed weighed out into this bucket here. I'll pour that into the cement mixer next. So I've got the grass seed already in the cement mixer there, and then I've weighed out 10 pounds of the cracked corn. And I've started the cement mixer. So you can see the grass seed in there. Now I'm going to pour in the corn. You can see the corn in there getting mixed up. Let that mix for a little bit. So it's pretty well mixed up now. So I'm just going to start pouring it out into this trash can. And that's how I mix up the grass and the corn. About 50% by weight. So I just repeat that for 200 pounds worth of grass seed and 200 pounds worth of cracked corn. And I'll show you how the drill works next. Okay, so this is the grain drill. This is a John Deere Van Brunt DR1610. DR stands for double run, and I'll explain what that is here in a minute, but 16 is because there's 16 rows across the drill, and 10 because there's 10-inch spacing between the rows. This thing was built in 1947. I picked it up a couple years ago at an auction for $100, so it was a pretty good deal. It did need a little work. It hadn't been used in a while, so I had to lubricate everything and free it up. Also, one of these seed spouts was broken. This one right here was broken. You can see where I welded it there. Yeah, that was completely broken off, and that's all one big cast iron piece there. So I had to weld it with nickel rod, and that was fun. But that's about all it needed. Yeah, so the way this thing works is these wheels here on the end drive a chain that's inside this cover here. That chain drives this gear right here, and then you have a series of gears that you can choose from here. There's 5 different gears that you can put this thing in, and then there's actually a couple gears up in here. Yeah, right in there, there's a handful of gears. And if you flip one of those, a couple of those around, you can switch between high range and low range. So you've got 10 different speeds to choose from. And then inside the grain box here, there's actually 2 different feed spouts that you can choose from. You've got a small one over here on the left and a large one on the right. You just put this cap over the one that you're not using. And that's why they call it a double run, because there's two different runs or feeds that you can use depending on the seed that you're planting. The large side is obviously for larger seeds and planting at a heavier rate, and the small one for smaller seeds and lower rates. Then underneath each one of those, there's a lever here with 10 different positions that you can set this in. And what this does is it chokes down the flow area through this passage, and it, restricts the flow of seed. So that adjusts another adjustment for the seed rate. And you've got one on each side. So here's the other side. 10 different settings on this one as well. This is the small feed cup side. So every single one of these rows has those same adjustments on it. So yeah, that's the double run. So between those adjustments across 2 different feed cups, 5 different gears with high and low, gives you 10 different speeds. So in all, you've got 200 different possible metering rate settings, depending on that you can choose from, depending on the seed that you're planting and how heavy you want to plant it. So I'm planting dryland pasture grass, which they recommend planting at 25 pounds per acre. But I mixed it half and half with corn, so I'm going to double that for my total seed rate. So I want it to be at 50 pounds per acre approximately. From the factory, there's a nice chart over here that would tell you what gear and what settings to use for a given seed and given rate, but it's obviously gone. So I had to calibrate this thing myself and figure out which gear and settings I need in order to achieve 50 pounds per acre. And I did that last year. I'm going to do it again this year just to make sure. I know that last year I was in 3rd gear, low range, and had my large feed cup at position 20 or wide open. So I'm just going to verify that that's still correct. The way I'm going to do that is by putting some seed here over the one feed cup, and then I'm going to collect the seed down in this bucket. So it's going to run down this tube into the bucket here, and then I just rotate this wheel through 100 revolutions. So this white mark here is my index mark, and that's my corresponding mark on the drill. So I just rotate this wheel through 100 revolutions. So there's 1 revolution, and you can see the seed coming out of the tube there. So after 100 revolutions, I will weigh that seed and then multiply out the ratio that corresponds to an acre, and then I'll know, I'll be able to confirm that I'm actually getting 50 pounds per acre. So here you can see the seed flowing out of that metering cup right there, falling down into the tube and flowing down the tube into my bucket. And I don't know if you can see it, but if I reach in here and adjust my gate position, no, you can't really see it. Well, anyway, that gate just chokes off the flow area for the seed to come out and slows it down. So I've got that one wide open. All right. Okay, so I rotated that wheel 100 revolutions and captured all the seed down here in the bucket. And I took it over here, weighed it on the scale, subtracted the weight of my bucket, and it came out to about 375 grams of seed out of that one spout. So that's when you multiply that by 16 spouts, and then the ratio of the number of revolutions that it takes that diameter of a wheel to cover 1 acre, it comes out to about 55 pounds per acre, which is a little bit on the high side, but that's close enough for me. So we're gonna go with that. And then I'm gonna come over here and just double check this side over here. So I'll take the jack off this side, jack that wheel up over there, do the same process, make sure that all my settings are correct on that side. Because this wheel here only drives this half of the drill. These 8 spouts are driven by that wheel, and then this wheel over here drives these 8 on this side. Okay, so I just finished this side. Spun the wheel on 100 revolutions, and then captured the seed, brought it over there, put it on the scale. This side came out to just under 55 pounds per acre. So on average, this thing's gonna be putting out about 55 pounds per acre between the two sides, which is good. I was shooting for 50, so 55 is close enough for me. Yeah, so here's, before I take the rest of this out of here, I'll just show you kind of what it looks like. You can see the corn that's mixed in there with it. If it wasn't for that corn in there, this seed is fluffy enough that it would just form a bridge over the top of the metering cup. As it draws down, instead of flowing continuously. So right now I'm spinning the wheel. You can see how the seed is sinking down into that metering cup. It's just all falling in, flowing in nice and smoothly. Without the corn, it would kind of bridge up, get stuck. So that's the purpose of that. There is an attachment for this drill that involves taking off this cover plate and installing a shaft that runs through here, and it runs all the way across the grain box to the other side. It has a little auger with some flighting on it on each side of each metering cup, and those augers just constantly agitate the grain and kind of feed it into the metering cup, kind of like I'm doing there. And with that attachment, then you don't need to mix the corn in with the grass seed. You can just plant the grass seed by itself. Those augers will keep the grass seed from bridging, and it'll keep it flowing into the metering cups. But I don't have that attachment, and nor the time to make one right now. So mixing in with the corn is a cheap, easy way of getting by for now. All right, so I've got my press wheels installed back on the drill now that we're done with the calibration process. So just a quick run through of how this thing works. You've got these 2 levers over here that control the down pressure on each row, and you've got a few different settings on this lever. I'm going to keep this in the lightest setting because I don't want the seed to be very deep. It only needs to be like 1/8 of an inch deep. But that lever there pulls on this shaft here, which each row has an arm that goes from that shaft down to this rod, and then the spring here, well, this rod pushes down on the spring pushes down on this disc or row opener, and what that does is cuts a little trench in the ground because they're not exactly straight. They're slightly at an angle, kind of angled this way, and that leaves a little trench in the ground for the seed to fall into. And then we already went through how the metering cups work. So they just drop that seed down into this tube, which flows down into this cast iron piece here, and there's a hole in the bottom of this cast iron piece where the seed drops out, and it drops right into the row that this disc makes. And then these press wheels here are lined up with the rows. So this wheel, which is a very heavy metal wheel, it just packs in the dirt around that little trench that was made by the disc that has the seed laying in it, and that just closes in the trench and packs it down a little bit to get good seed to soil contact. Some seeds don't need to be pressed in or like to be pressed in like that, and alfalfa is one example of such seed. So for seeds like that, instead of using press wheels, you use drag chains, and it's just as it sounds. It's just a little, exactly as it sounds. It's just a little chain that hooks onto this little hook right here, and it drags behind the trench here, or the seed spout, and it just kind of agitates the ground and just barely covers the seed with dirt without packing it in too tight. But the grass does like to have good seed to soil contact, so these press wheels work well for that. Now last year I planted the grass a little bit too deep. The seed was about 3/4 of an inch deep, and it should only be about 1/8 of an inch deep. And at the time I wasn't in a great position to make adjustments, so I just went with it, and it ended up working out okay. The grass came up, but what I really needed to do was adjust this little stop right here. There's you can see the notch right here. There's the notch that it's in, and then there's a couple notches above that, and that basically controls the amount of down pressure on that disc. So that's another way of controlling the down pressure in addition to this lever. So even though I had it on the lightest setting last year, it was still going too deep. And so this year I went ahead and adjusted each one of these spring stops down one lever, or one notch, to reduce the down pressure, so these row openers won't dig quite so deep. And we'll see how that works out. But yeah, at this point I'm ready to go. Both sides are calibrated, and I've got the grain box full of the grass seed here, so we're ready to go. And it's about 8 acres that we're going to plant today. Okay, so I just made it up to the field here. This little corner right here is what we're going to be planting. There's a little bit more leftover vegetation out here than I remember. You can see the weeds there. So I'm actually going to go go back and get the mower, mow this little bit down here first. That over there looks pretty good. That doesn't need to be mowed, but just where all these thick weeds are, I think those are going to clog up the drill and just create a mess. So I'm going to go back, grab the mower, mow this down first, and then we'll start planting. Okay, so we've got the mower hooked up, and we're just going to mow this little 1 acre section right here that I did not mow last year. You can see the wheat stubble right here. I actually planted wheat here last year in this little 1 acre section just as a kind of an experiment. It actually went really well. The wheat did better than the grass. But ultimately what I want is grass. So I'm going to mow that down. Well, mow the weeds down. The wheat would actually be pretty good for the grass. Mow the weeds down. That's what I can say. Probably going to consume the rest of my day. So we just finished mowing that acre, and we're about out of daylight, so we'll have to finish the, or do all the planting tomorrow. It's looking a lot better now that it's all mowed down. I'm just going to leave the grain drill over here, out here overnight, and I'll come back tomorrow morning, hook up, do it, get it all planted.